Welcome to a tutorial video for Twine 2.0. In this video I'm going to cover changer and sensor macros. To start, I've put together a story called Changer and Sensor Macros. So we see, starting here, we're on the space station Icarus and we're looking at our station messages. And we see we have a different font, Welcome Susan Storm. We have a different color, all warning messages will be red. And we have a different style, important messages will be bold. Now let's pull up the menu. See station status, suit status, and then swipe to close. So click on station status. Well, conditions are optimal, and we notice it's a different font. Suit status, it's a different font, and swipe to close. So let's run the mouse across, and it disappears. Swipe to close. Troubles begin. Oh, we see bold in red, major leak detected in the suit, air depleting. So we're on the metal floor and it's cold. There's an alarm. We have a leak in our suit. Oh, what are we going to do? Where there's a hatch 2 meters ahead. So let's try to move towards it. Oh, and then we move slowly towards it. Click to find and seal the door. Oh no, we have 11 seconds. 9. What's going on? 6 seconds. 2 seconds. Oh, the air's depleted. Let's go back. Let's close the hatch. Close the hatch. Oh, took the suit off. We're breathing in the air of the corridor. The door's closed. Now what? Okay. That was a bit of fun. So let's see. What does that look like in code? Okay. Entering the station is the start passage. So it's our first day on the job like we saw. Then we have a changer macro. We're changing the font here to monospace for Welcome Susan Storm, as we saw before. Then we're changing the text color, changing it to red. Warning messages will be in red. Then we're changing the text style to bold. Important messages will be in bold. Notice though that color, and you'll see this several times, uses the British spelling with a U. So text color or color changes will always be OU instead of OR to end. Okay. So pull up the menu. So let's look at pull up the menu. Well, to start we have an assignment macro. We're setting menu style to, and then this selection here. 2 different changer macros combined together with the addition sign. So we have the font changer macro, as we saw before. We changed the font to monospace. And then the text style changer macro to change it to bold. So now right here we have 2 different sensor macros. Sensor macros act on something the user does. They sense some type of change. A link, a click, a mouse over, some type of timing, they all sense different things. For link, it creates a link with whatever's in the quotes. So create a link station status. Then when it's clicked, replace whatever was that link with whatever's in this hook, with whatever's in these brackets. In this case, because we set the variable menu style to be these 2 combined changer macros, we can display the text station conditions are optimal in the style of these 2. So it will be the font monospace and the text style bold. And the same with suit status. When we click on the link suit status, it will set suit air at 100% to menu style. Menu style is font monospace text style bold. Okay. So the last thing we have here is a link, not a link macro, but a link swipe to close, and the name tag close menu. The name tag close menu is associated with pointing towards this link, swipe to close. Down here at the bottom, we have another sensor macro, a mouseover. Mouseover works by detecting if the mouse is over something. In this case, if the mouse is over whatever is associated with close menu is associated with swipe to close, do something in this hook, do something in these brackets. For this, we're using a changer macro replace. So we're replacing whatever is associated with close menu. Close menu is associated with swipe to close, and we're replacing it with nothing, a single space. So when the mouse goes over swipe to close link, it runs this, which replaces close menu with nothing. So we can swipe to close it. By running the mouse across, it disappears, becomes a single space. Okay, so the next thing is troubles begin. Okay, troubles begin, we see again, using assignment macro, we're setting warning text style variable to text style bold, color red. Notice again British spelling with a U. Then we're immediately using it to style this text within the hook to be this text style bold, color red. Then we see again a couple of paragraphs of normal text. And then this time we're seeing the link sensor macro used again. So we try to move towards the hatch in quotations. When it's clicked, replace with this. You move slowly towards the hatch, and then a link to the passage, try to find a way to seal the door. So we click on try to move towards the hatch, then we see a message, and then we finally see a link to the next passage. So what does try to find a way to seal the door look like? Well, it's a little bit complicated. So as you saw when I ran the story, it had a countdown. The countdown was part of the sensor macro live. This right here. The sensor macro live acts on some time here in milliseconds. In this case, 1000 milliseconds, so every second. Keep in mind though, as you may have noticed, it didn't run exactly at a second. That's because two different things were going on there. One, timing in browsers isn't completely accurate. It's mostly accurate, but isn't completely accurate all the time. And in two, right here in this assignment statement, we're setting elapsed time to rounding time, which is a special keyword in Twine 2.0. Time is the elapsed amount of time since the passage was first rendered in milliseconds. So dividing time by 1000 to get seconds and setting it to elapsed time. So because of this rounding and because of the browser, the timing was a little bit off. Luckily, in the case of our story, it was enough to make it a little bit more exciting. It wasn't exactly 1 second per tick here. But the air was leaking out, so it worked well for our story. But keep that in mind if you're using timing in the browser, or especially with Twine. It isn't going to be completely accurate all the time. So anyway, starting at the top here, we're doing something a little bit different. Coming back to, we're using brackets. Opening bracket, and way down here, closing bracket. Now the brackets compress white space. If you used earlier versions of Twine, you might have used a similar trick. If you have a whole bunch of code and you want to compress the space that it would have taken up in the passage, you can use the brackets now in Twine 2.0 to compress all that white space together. Without these brackets, there would have been several lines of empty space, and then finally the warning message at the very bottom, and it would have looked a little bit off. So instead of that, we can use brackets to compress our white space. It's a habit you might want to get into if you're going to write a lot of different code in a single passage. That way you can both visually tell where it starts and where it begins with the brackets, and it won't show up when the passage is rendered. So we're using brackets to compress the white space. Then we have 3 assignment macro statements, setting the variable door closed to false, setting out of airtime to 12, and setting elapsed time to 0. Then we're moving to the live sensor macro. Again, live works on a time. In this case, 1000 milliseconds, as I mentioned before. Live, you need to keep in mind, repeats until it is stopped. It will continue to do whatever's within its brackets, this selection, every second in this case, every 1000 milliseconds, until it is stopped or until the user moves to another passage. It will just keep repeating. To stop live, you need to use the stop macro. Stop. So inside this hook what are we doing? The first thing we're doing is an if value macro, checking if the variable door closed is true. If it is, stop. Stop the live macro from repeating anymore. Then we're using an else value macro. If door closed is false, do this, else. Within the else, we have two assignment macro statements. We're setting elapsed time to time, again, the amount of time since the passage was first rendered, divided by 1,000, and then rounding. Round is a number of math macros that are brought over from the underlying system of JavaScript. Round, minimum, maximum, cosine, sine, tangent are a number of different math macros you can use when you want to make sure to do some complex equations, or just simply, as I'm doing here, round, because the milliseconds will be a fairly large number after a few seconds. And it's also pretty exact, like it could be 12,500. Well, we don't exactly want to subtract 12 seconds by some fraction, because otherwise we'll get an even weird fraction. So we divide it by 1,000 to get seconds, and then we just round. So we get the elapsed time, roughly again. Then we're setting out of air time to the difference between out of air time, 12 seconds, minus the elapsed time, which is, again, rounded from the amount of time since the passage was rendered, divided by 1,000 to get seconds, and then rounded. And then finally, we're replacing whatever is associated with the name tag warning with warning text style. You have the value of out of air time seconds left. Then, as you saw when we viewed the passage when it was rendered, it counted down for us. Each tick of live, as long as the door was not closed, replaced what was associated with warning with you have 12, 11, 10, counting down, seconds left. In the style warning text style, which was set in a previous passage. Finally, if out of air time is less than 0, if we don't close the door in time and don't close the hatch, then we're using goTo, which is a holdover from an earlier version of Twine, and it simply goes to some passage. In this case, it goes to the passage dead. At the bottom here, if we click on close hatch, we want some things to happen. All of this within the hook. We want to set door close to true, so that when live goes to check, door close will be true and to stop. We also want to replace what is in warning. Warning is way down here. The name tag warning is associated with this hook. In warning text style, you have 12 seconds left as it starts, and then of course ticks down each time. When you place that content with, you took off the suit, breathing in the air of the corridor, and we want to finally replace what is associated with the name tab close hatch with the door is closed, now what? Name tag close hatch is associated with the link close hatch. And so when we close the hatch, we replace that content, replace this content, and the live finally stops. So the very last passage to look at is dead, which is not actually linked to from any of the passage I have in this story. It is the result of a goTo statement. When we go to dead, we saw air was depleted. Again, when out of air was less than 0, we invoked goTo, the goTo macro, went to the passage dead. Then in dead, we couldn't do anything else because we were dead. Our air ran out. Well, there you have it, an example of changer macros and sensor macros. Changer macros, again, change something. They change usually text or something that could be textual, perhaps spaces or something else like that. You can use font, text color, text style. Then we have things like sensor macros that sense things, mouse over, links, that all react in some way. And finally, we have things like live that just sense time and repeat until we stop them. So running it one more time, we see we have different fonts, different colors, different styles. We can make links to different things. We can do mouse over. Again, a different color and a different style. We can use live as a sensor macro to do counting for us. And finally, we can use click macro to show some different things that are replaced. Well, there you have it. Change your macros and sensor macros. Even more tools to work towards building pretty advanced things in Twine 2.0. Thanks for watching.